This one is going to be a mix of 5D mystics and functional adults. So number one, the biggest difference you'll notice if you're in the 5D collective is that you are a person who knows exactly how to think and feel on your own. You're a differentiated self. This means you don't belong to a group or not a group, and that's been since forever. So you don't have the heartbreak, shame, or gut wrench, which is unresolved trauma memory. And this takes place and is presented in many different ways, shapes, or forms. You'll find that it's people who tend to want to change others or change the world and or save the world and or save others. Patrick Tiahan explains the codependent type, and he is a therapist who was a childhood trauma individual, went through his healing, and presents to us, I don't have that childhood trauma, so I have what I would say is a normal childhood, because I would let anybody have my childhood. And as he says, one of those red flags about if you had childhood traumas, if you would wish upon no person to have your childhood. And we all do know of the unfortunate events of childhood trauma. Some kids are treated like punching bags. Others have households that are consistently unsafe. And there's a lot of different ways that the 4D and 3D collective and other soul age groups might think that we should go back to the ancient times, which is where the 5D collective is like, hell no. We don't think so, because hell's in the body of the individuals who have trauma memory. And so we're in favor of humanity, and in fact, that's our species. And 5D mystics don't go around talking about energy vampires, dark auras, or entities attaching to you. We have a way that we're relating to the energy sphere with consciousness, neuroscience, and in fact, the scientific methodology of those who are walking now like this with the spirituality of a guru. So for me, Sadhguru, the metaphysics esotericism, they have a lot of different ways that they explain concepts with stories. 5D don't do stories. Differentiated selves. Thoughts and feelings are our own. We don't need to use subjective adjectives to describe. We are really more interested in, let's stick to knowing my relationship to the external is in fact already going to be through these eyes, so I'm impacting it. This is why I'm a differentiated self. So I'm Maria as a person and a spirituality process, which we all are, but the difference is the 5D collective knows how to say my subjective experience, your subjective experience, even without ever hearing about Terry Real. And Terry Real is another lovely therapist who talks to couples on how to communicate. And as he points out, no partner fixes anyone. So here's where a 5D collective, we don't fix. Humanity is not broken. The ones who feel humanity is broken, it's the heartbreak, gut wrench, shame. Shame is part of our ancestors, the human species ancestors. I know the 4D likes to venture off again into storyland. That's why the difference is we don't do stories. We're able to use, thank you, neuroscience community, for explaining the brain and mind community. So here's where the difference of an awakening for a 5D collective, which right now, thank goodness, we got a bunch of them, is that we end the cycle of, wait a minute, we must have some other purpose for being here. Technically, I watched this really great educator. He gets interviewed, or he's interviewing a lot of people. I'm not sure where he stands, but he likes to question, and he likes to use words like any one of us does. I love when I watch words of people as they integrate certain aspects into their interview and try to get a conclusion, and there's philosophy for you. No, so that's why we like the data. The 5D collective sees philosophy. I love philosophy. One of my favorite people, Socrates, when I learned that he would sit around and they just chit-chat. I love chit-chatting. Here's the other part, 5D collective, we chit-chat. There's no objective except for chit-chatting. I know people, they don't like to do that. So I respect them, and I don't use their time in just chit-chat, because they're wanting to prove a point, or they're wanting to have like an exchange that they can actually weigh down. And then I respect the loved ones that I want to chit-chat with, and they remind me when I'm chit-chatting, for me, it means that you're going to challenge some of what I'm thinking or not thinking. So I try to make sure to share in a way that's productive while also not challenging. And so this where an adult, again, we don't need Terrio, but he does make some valid points in my notes. I need to find my notes, but we've read enough of them to know where subjective experiences. So my relationship to the outside is going to be different than yours. And a 5D knows this automatically. So we're not going to change you. We're not superior or martyrs. We're not going to be taking care of you. We ain't going to blame ourselves because you made whatever choice you made. And we won't be blaming you for anything we choose, because we also maintain the alignment with our heart body, our value body, our physical energy and mind. So we learn how to use the right and left side of our mode. We learn how to build those emotion regulation skills, because as teenagers, instead of doing the heartbreak dance and saying everybody's going to suffer, and that's where my 5D is at, we're like, no, that actually doesn't make sense, because love is our nature. And we're polyamorous because we embody Purusha Prakriti. So people who are inclined to be like, wow, every day is a beautiful day, it's because we didn't disconnect from this consciousness sphere. Now, the guy that I was talking about, the interview, went something along the lines of, he basically had this philosopher, I think it was, state that yes, we could, if we wanted to, create consciousness. And this philosopher is like, nature already did that. Humans are consciousness evolved. Yes, we went from primary to secondary. Humans have secondary consciousness. Now, I know, again, 4D loves the stories. They love to create the whys in a way of not just accepting that we don't need a why. And here's the other part. 5D is a self-agent with the bonding and certainty, but the drivers of bonding and certainty do not lead the way. The driver of I'm a self and you're a self, and I don't really understand why you're making such a big deal about not having necessarily a purpose that goes beyond your, really you're going to spend the infinite human, not higher consciousness potential view in a space of actual fear and heartbreak and attachment systems. So on that note, when we meet people who are not using their prefrontal cortex, we will notice it because of the way that they approach topics. So prefrontal cortex is engaged when you are a established piece of self-compassionate and compassionate Zen master. Very straightforward again. And that's because we love the entire human race, and we are here to support people to be their self. And so we are not actually looking for babysitters or for those lovely guides who talk to us like children. And there's ethical cults being built right now with the 4D, and they also have culty cults and traditional cults, and that's for all the people who don't have a differentiated self. They want to be non-differentiated because they already are still non-differentiated. What does that mean? They do social good behavior automatically because they want to bond. So everybody has to think like the stereotypes, like the generalizations, and I could give you so many examples, but yeah, so that's not a 5D collective. No, we're okay with, you have completely opposing views than I, and we're just going to have a nice, actual adult conversation about it, which is going to have no point at the end of it. Zero. Nobody's trying to bring it to a point. There's no circle closing. And so again, this is the beauty of infinite, but some people don't like infinite higher human consciousness potential experiences because it destabilizes their core. Because their core is not yet able to find purpose in life beyond, so again, this is existential. We're not going to talk about that one. I wanted to point out something different. For neuroplasticity, we've talked about the bright and dark sides of it, thanks to NICABM having a lovely infographic. Please look it up. But I just recently also got to see this lovely neuroscience lady. Her name is Sabina Brennan, doctor. Chronic stress in the brain. And she says what happens when there's chronic stress, this neuroplasticity, instead of being used with your frontal lobes, and your frontal lobes overriding your amygdala, which would mean the adult version of you, the amygdala starts to override. And so here's where the neuroplasticity then works on the amygdala. And as we know, people who have an enlarged amygdala are living life from a survival mode. And so this is where trauma doesn't get processed. There's a whole bunch of different things that we could talk about, which I don't have time to talk about. We'll talk, maybe I'll do part 2. But the point is, it's if you handle this lovely body of yours with your awareness, and emotions are that key component, as Sadhguru points out, in your body and mind. If they take instructions from you, then being healthy, peaceful, and joyful is not only a possibility, it's a natural consequence. Tune in for more. That's what we talk about in different ways, and we also have videos on YouTube.